Maya Chen never imagined that the proudest moment of her life would become the catalyst for the most devastating betrayal she'd ever experience. Standing in her brand new kitchen, admiring the subway tiles she'd carefully selected and installed herself, she heard the sound that would change everything: her sister's key turning in the front door lock. What happened next would shatter every boundary Maya thought she'd established and force her to make a choice that would define the rest of her relationship with her family. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya had always been the practical one in the Chen family. While her older sister Sophia glided through life expecting others to solve her problems, Maya learned early that independence was not just a choice but a necessity. Growing up in their modest apartment in Queens, the contrast between the two sisters was stark and painful. Sophia, 3 years older, and blessed with the kind of effortless beauty that made strangers stop and stare, had never worked a day in her life that wasn't directly related to maintaining her appearance or social status. Their parents, first-generation immigrants from Taiwan who ran a small accounting firm, had different expectations for each daughter. Sophia was meant to marry well, to find a successful man who would provide the financial security they'd worked so hard to achieve in America. Maya, with her practical nature and academic aptitude, was expected to be the backup plan, the one who would build her own security through education and hard work. The dynamic had been established early. When Sophia wanted dance lessons, their parents found the money. When Maya asked for art supplies for her architecture class, she was told to be more practical with her requests. When Sophia crashed her first car at 19, their father bought her a replacement within the week. When Maya needed a laptop for her engineering studies, she worked 3 part-time jobs to afford a refurbished model. Maya had graduated summa cum laude with a degree in civil engineering from Columbia University, an achievement that merited exactly 1 congratulatory dinner at their usual family restaurant. Sophia had dropped out of community college twice, changes in direction that were met with understanding and support for her journey of self-discovery. Now, at 31, Maya stood in the home she'd saved for 8 years to purchase. The small craftsman-style house in Astoria wasn't glamorous by Manhattan standards, but it was hers. Every mortgage payment, every renovation, every carefully chosen piece of furniture represented years of sacrifice and determination. She'd foregone vacations, designer clothes, and expensive restaurants to make her dream of homeownership a reality. The house had good bones, as her contractor friend Louis often said, but it had needed extensive work when she'd bought it 18 months ago. Maya had thrown herself into the renovation with the same methodical approach she brought to her engineering projects. She'd spent weekends learning to tile, watching YouTube videos on electrical work, and slowly transforming the neglected property into something beautiful. The kitchen had been her masterpiece. She'd torn out the old cabinets herself, sanded and painted every surface, and installed new fixtures with painstaking attention to detail. The result was a space that felt both modern and warm, with white subway tiles, butcher block countertops, and open shelving that displayed her modest collection of vintage ceramics. Her living room featured built-in bookshelves she'd constructed herself, filled with engineering textbooks, novels, and the architectural coffee table books that had inspired her since college. The walls were painted in soft, sophisticated colors that made the modest space feel larger and more elegant. Every element had been chosen carefully, not because it was expensive, but because it contributed to the overall feeling of peace and accomplishment she'd sought to create. The bedroom was her sanctuary, with blackout curtains she'd sewn herself and a platform bed she'd built from reclaimed wood. Even the bathroom, tiny as it was, reflected her aesthetic vision with its vintage-inspired fixtures and carefully selected tile work. Maya had learned to find pride in these small accomplishments because recognition from her family was rare. Her parents visited occasionally, offering polite compliments but focusing most of their attention on when she might find a husband to help with the mortgage payments. They seemed unable to understand that Maya didn't want help with the mortgage payments, that the independence of owning her own home was precisely the point. Sophia had visited exactly once since Maya had moved in, arriving unannounced on a Tuesday evening 6 months ago. She'd walked through the house with the distracted air of someone inspecting a hotel room, making vague comments about the size and location before launching into a detailed description of the penthouse apartment her current boyfriend was considering purchasing in Midtown. That visit had lasted exactly 47 minutes, ending when Sophia received a call from her yoga instructor about a canceled class. Maya had felt both relieved and stung by her sister's obvious disinterest in the project that had consumed Maya's life for over a year. The contrast in their lifestyles had only grown more pronounced as they entered their 30s. Sophia moved through a series of relationships with increasingly wealthy men, each one providing a more luxurious lifestyle than the last. She lived in borrowed apartments, drove borrowed cars, and maintained her appearance with treatments and procedures funded by her rotating cast of admirers. Maya, meanwhile, had built a stable career as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company. Her work involved overseeing the development of residential and commercial buildings throughout the outer boroughs. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, well-paid, and deeply satisfying. She understood structures, foundations, the way individual components came together to create something solid. Her social life was quieter than Sophia's, but more genuine. She had a small circle of close friends, mostly other professionals who valued substance over spectacle. They gathered for potluck dinners in Maya's dining room, played board games on weekend evenings, and supported each other through career challenges and personal growth. Maya had been seeing David, a landscape architect, for 8 months. Their relationship was built on shared values and genuine compatibility rather than financial convenience. They spent weekends hiking in the Hudson Valley, trying new restaurants in Queens, and working together on Maya's small backyard garden. David appreciated the work Maya had put into her home and often contributed his expertise to her ongoing projects. The morning everything changed started like any other Saturday. Maya woke early, made coffee in her beloved kitchen, and settled at her dining table with blueprints for a community center project she was managing. The October sunlight streamed through the windows she'd meticulously cleaned the day before, casting geometric patterns across the hardwood floors she'd refinished herself. She was deep in calculations when she heard the sound of a car door slamming in her driveway. Maya glanced at the clock, puzzled. She wasn't expecting anyone, and David was at his nephew's soccer game until afternoon. Moving to the front window, she saw Sophia climbing out of an expensive-looking sedan, designer luggage in hand. Maya's first thought was confusion rather than concern. Sophia never visited without calling ahead, partly because she rarely thought of Maya spontaneously, and partly because she considered Maya's neighborhood too far from Manhattan to be convenient. The sight of luggage suggested this wasn't a brief social call. Opening the front door before Sophia could knock, Maya stepped onto her small porch with its carefully tended planters and vintage rocking chair. Her sister looked impeccable as always, dressed in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Maya's monthly grocery budget. Her honey blonde hair fell in perfect waves, and her makeup was flawless despite the early hour. Sophia smiled with the practiced charm she'd perfected over years of managing difficult men and awkward social situations. She climbed the porch steps with her luggage, pausing to kiss Maya's cheek in greeting. "Surprise," Sophia announced, though her tone suggested she expected Maya to be pleased rather than startled by the unannounced visit. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I have the most incredible news to share." Maya glanced at the luggage again, noting there were 3 pieces, including what appeared to be a garment bag. This wasn't the setup for a quick coffee and catch-up session. "Of course not," Maya replied automatically, though her mind was racing with questions. "Come in, I just made coffee." Sophia followed Maya into the house, and immediately Maya could sense her sister's critical assessment beginning. Sophia's eyes swept the living room with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to evaluating real estate for its market value rather than its personal significance. "You've been busy," Sophia commented, setting her purse on Maya's coffee table without asking. "It's very cozy." The word cozy in Sophia's vocabulary was rarely a compliment. It typically meant small, cramped, or insufficient by her standards. Maya felt a familiar defensive tension beginning to build in her shoulders. "Thank you," Maya replied evenly, leading the way to the kitchen. "I've put a lot of work into making it feel like home." In the kitchen, Sophia continued her evaluation while Maya poured coffee into 2 mugs. She noticed Sophia examining the subway tiles with a slight frown, running her finger along the grout lines as if checking for imperfections.
Did you do this work yourself? Sophia asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer and found it concerning. Most of it, yes, Maya replied, adding cream to her coffee. I enjoyed learning new skills, and it saved a significant amount of money. Sophia accepted the coffee mug with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. How very practical of you. Though I have to ask, aren't you worried about resale value? I mean, when you decide to sell and move somewhere more suitable, won't buyers be concerned about amateur renovation work?
The criticism was delivered with Sophia's trademark blend of concern and condescension. Maya had learned to recognize this tone over the years, the way her sister could undermine her choices while appearing to offer helpful advice. I'm not planning to sell, Maya said firmly. This is my home, not an investment property. Sophia laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Oh, Maya, you're so sentimental about everything. But seriously, this neighborhood, this size house, it's not exactly where someone in your position should be settling down. What happens when you get married, start a family? You'll outgrow this place in no time. Maya felt the familiar sting of having her choices questioned and found lacking. I like this neighborhood, and the house is perfect for my needs right now. If my needs change in the future, I'll address that then. Your needs, Sophia repeated thoughtfully, settling onto one of the bar stools at Maya's kitchen island. Speaking of needs, that's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I have amazing news and I need a tiny favor. The word favor in Sophia's vocabulary covered everything from borrowing $20 to requesting major life disruptions. Maya waited silently for the explanation, though she was already bracing herself for disappointment. Richard and I are taking a break, Sophia announced, with the casual tone she might use to describe changing her nail polish color. It's completely mutual, very mature, but I need somewhere to stay while I figure out my next chapter. Richard was Sophia's current boyfriend, a hedge fund manager who'd been supporting her lifestyle for the past 14 months. Maya had met him twice at family gatherings, finding him pleasant but transparently aware that Sophia's interest in him correlated directly with his financial portfolio. I'm sorry to hear that, Maya said carefully. Are you planning to stay with Mom and Dad? Sophia's expression shifted to one of mild horror. In Queens? In that tiny apartment? Maya, I can barely breathe in there. Besides, they're so intrusive about my personal life. I need space to process this transition. Maya began to understand the direction this conversation was heading. What exactly are you asking, Sophia? Well, Sophia began, her voice taking on the wheedling tone she'd perfected as a child. I was hoping I could stay here for just a few weeks while I figure things out. It would be so helpful to have a sister's support during this difficult time. The request shouldn't have been surprising, but Maya found herself genuinely shocked by its audacity. Sophia had shown minimal interest in Maya's life, her home, or her well-being. The idea that she would now expect to move in as a temporary solution to her romantic problems felt like a violation of boundaries Maya hadn't even realized she'd established. Stay here? Maya repeated, buying time to process the request. For how long? Just until I get back on my feet, Sophia replied with a vague wave of her hand. A month, maybe 2 at the most. I promise I'll be the perfect houseguest. You won't even know I'm here. Maya looked around her carefully organized kitchen, imagining Sophia's presence disrupting the peaceful routine she'd worked so hard to create. The house was small, with only one bathroom and limited privacy. More importantly, it was her sanctuary, the first space she'd ever controlled completely. Sophia, I appreciate that you're going through a difficult time, but I don't think this is the best solution, Maya said slowly. Have you considered other options? Maybe renting a studio apartment temporarily? Sophia's expression shifted from pleading to incredulous. With what money? Maya, you know I don't have savings sitting around. And rental applications take time, credit checks, all of that bureaucratic nonsense. I need somewhere to stay right now. What about your friends? Surely someone has a spare room or couch you could use temporarily. My friends live in Manhattan, in real apartments with doormen and proper amenities, Sophia replied, her tone sharpening. I can't exactly impose on people who are used to a certain standard of living.
The implication that Maya's home fell below acceptable standards for Sophia's social circle stung more than Maya expected. I see. So my house is suitable for you when you need something, but not good enough for your friends to visit? Sophia realized her mistake immediately, switching back to her more conciliatory approach. That's not what I meant at all. Your house is lovely, really. It's just different from what my friends are used to. But that's exactly why it would be perfect for me right now. Quiet, away from the drama, a chance to really think about what I want next. Maya felt trapped between her ingrained family loyalty and her instinct for self-preservation. Saying no to Sophia had never been easy, partly because their parents had always expected Maya to accommodate her sister's needs, and partly because Sophia was skilled at making refusal seem selfish and cruel. I don't know, Sophia. This is my private space. I've worked really hard to create a home that feels peaceful and organized. Having a house guest, even temporarily, would be a significant disruption. Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing that Maya was wavering rather than offering immediate agreement. A disruption? Maya, I'm your sister. I'm going through a breakup and you're worried about disruption? The guilt trip was expertly deployed, hitting exactly the target Sophia intended. Maya felt selfish for prioritizing her comfort over her sister's crisis, even though a small voice in her mind pointed out that Sophia's crisis was largely self-created. It's not that I don't want to help, Maya began, but Sophia interrupted with renewed enthusiasm. Then it's settled. Oh, Maya, you're the best sister anyone could ask for. I promise this will be so much fun. We never got to live together as adults, and now we'll have this amazing bonding experience. Before Maya could clarify that she hadn't actually agreed to anything, Sophia was already moving toward the front door to retrieve her luggage. The speed of her assumption revealed that she'd never seriously considered the possibility that Maya might refuse. Maya followed her sister outside, watching with growing alarm as Sophia began unloading what appeared to be enough belongings for a much longer stay than the few weeks she'd mentioned. In addition to the luggage Maya had initially noticed, there were boxes, a hanging rack of clothes, and several expensive-looking handbags. Sophia, how much stuff do you have? Maya asked, genuinely concerned about where everything would fit in her small house. Just the essentials, Sophia replied, dragging a large suitcase up the porch steps. I had to grab everything quickly before Richard got back from his business trip. You know how ugly these things can get when it comes to dividing possessions. The casual mention of retrieving belongings before Richard returned suggested a level of calculation that made Maya uncomfortable. This wasn't a mutual breakup as Sophia had initially described, but rather a strategic exit that required stealth and speed. Did you two actually break up, or did you just leave? Maya asked directly.
Sophia paused in her luggage management, considering her response. It's complicated. We had a huge fight before he left for Hong Kong, and I realized I couldn't live that way anymore. So yes, I left. Sometimes you have to take action instead of waiting for the other person to make decisions for you. Maya helped carry the bags inside, though each trip from the car to the house felt like she was enabling a decision she hadn't actually made. By the time everything was moved into her living room, the space felt cramped and chaotic in a way that made Maya's chest tighten with anxiety. Sophia surveyed the pile of belongings with satisfaction, as if she'd successfully completed a challenging logistical operation. There, that wasn't so bad. Now, where should I set up? I was thinking your spare room would be perfect. Maya's spare room was barely large enough for a desk and some storage shelves. She used it as a home office and craft space, the place where she worked on projects and pursued hobbies that brought her joy. The idea of giving up that sanctuary felt like losing a piece of herself. That room is really small, Sophia. It's not set up as a bedroom. Oh, that's fine. I'm very adaptable. Maybe you could help me move some of your things out temporarily? I don't need much space, just somewhere private to sleep and keep my clothes. The assumption that Maya would rearrange her home to accommodate Sophia's unexpected arrival crystallized something that had been building in Maya's mind all morning. This wasn't a request for help between sisters. It was an invasion disguised as an emergency. Sophia, I think we need to slow down and talk about this properly, Maya said, trying to keep her voice calm. I haven't actually agreed to you moving in, even temporarily. Sophia turned from examining Maya's bookshelf, her expression shifting to confusion and then hurt. What do you mean? I thought we just settled this. I explained my situation, you said you wanted to help, and I brought my things in. What's there to discuss? I said I wanted to help, not that you could move in, Maya clarified. Those are very different things. I need time to think about this, and we need to establish some clear boundaries and expectations if it's going to work. Boundaries? Sophia repeated the word as if Maya had suggested something offensive. Maya, we're family. I'm not some random roommate you found on the internet. I don't need a formal lease agreement to stay with my sister for a few weeks. The dismissal of Maya's concerns as unnecessary formality revealed exactly the attitude that made Maya hesitant about the arrangement. Sophia expected accommodation without negotiation, support without reciprocity. Even family members need to discuss expectations when they're living together, Maya insisted. Things like how long you'll stay, how we'll handle expenses, house rules, privacy boundaries. These conversations prevent problems later. Sophia sat down heavily on Maya's couch, her carefully composed facade beginning to crack. I can't believe you're making this so complicated. I'm going through the worst breakup of my life, I have nowhere else to go, and you're talking about house rules like I'm some kind of tenant? The emotional manipulation was so familiar that Maya almost fell into her usual pattern of backing down and apologizing. But something about standing in her own home, surrounded by the evidence of her hard work and independence, made her hold her ground. I'm not trying to make it complicated, Maya said. I'm trying to make it work for both of us. If you stay here without clear expectations, we're going to end up resenting each other. Fine, Sophia said with exaggerated patience. What are your precious boundaries? Maya took a deep breath, realizing she was about to establish parameters she'd never articulated before, even to herself. First, we need to agree on how long you'll stay. I need a specific end date, not an open-ended arrangement. I already told you, a month or two at most. I need you to pick one, and I need you to start looking for your own place immediately, not waiting until the last minute. Sophia's jaw tightened slightly. Fine, 2 months, but I can't control how quickly apartments become available. Second, expenses. You'll contribute to groceries and utilities while you're here. Of course, Sophia agreed quickly, though Maya noticed she didn't ask about specific amounts. Third, the spare room is my office. If you stay there, you'll need to respect that it's a shared space during the day when I need to work. That seems reasonable. Fourth, overnight guests need to be discussed in advance. This is a small house, and I value my privacy. Sophia's expression sharpened. Overnight guests? Maya, I'm not planning to throw parties. I'm going through a breakup, remember? I'm talking about David. He stays over sometimes, and that arrangement doesn't change because you're here. Oh, Sophia seemed genuinely surprised that Maya's life included romantic relationships that might take priority over her comfort. I suppose that's fair. And finally, house rules. No smoking inside, no loud music after 10 p.m., clean up after yourself in shared spaces, and ask before using my personal belongings. The list felt both necessary and somehow petty as Maya articulated it. These were things that should have been obvious between respectful adults, but her history with Sophia suggested that obvious didn't mean automatic. Anything else? Sophia asked with barely concealed irritation. Should I submit references and a security deposit? I'm trying to prevent problems, not create them, replied. If these expectations seem unreasonable, maybe staying here isn't the right solution for your situation. Sophia studied Maya's face, perhaps recognizing something different in her sister's demeanor. No, they're fine. I agree to your terms. Can we please move past this now? I really need to unpack and get settled. Maya felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. She'd established boundaries, but she had no idea whether Sophia would actually respect them. Still, the conversation felt like progress, a departure from the usual pattern of Maya simply accommodating whatever Sophia needed. They spent the next 2 hours transforming Maya's office into a temporary bedroom. Maya moved her desk into her own bedroom and packed away her craft supplies to make room for Sophia's belongings.
Watching her carefully organized space disappear under piles of designer clothes and accessories felt like watching a small piece of her identity being erased.
Sophia, meanwhile, seemed to bloom as she claimed the space. She hung her clothes in Maya's closet, arranged her beauty products across Maya's bathroom counter, and rearranged furniture to better suit her preferences. Her ability to make herself at home was impressive and slightly alarming. By evening, the house felt fundamentally different. Sophia's presence was everywhere, from her shoes by the front door to her dramatic phone conversations that carried through the thin walls. Maya found herself moving quietly through her own home, trying not to disturb her sister's adjustment process. David arrived at 7 for their planned dinner together, bringing ingredients for the stir-fry they'd planned to cook. Maya met him at the door with an apologetic expression and a quick explanation of the day's unexpected developments. "She's staying for 2 months?" David asked quietly, glancing toward the closed door of the former office where Sophia was unpacking. "That's what we agreed on," Maya replied, though she was already questioning the wisdom of that agreement. David was diplomatically silent on the subject, but Maya could see his concern. They'd fallen into comfortable routines over the past months, and Sophia's presence would inevitably disrupt those patterns. Dinner was an exercise in careful navigation. Sophia emerged from her room dressed for an evening out, her hair and makeup perfectly styled. She was charming and attentive to David, asking thoughtful questions about his work and complimenting Maya on her cooking. To an outside observer, it might have seemed like a pleasant family dinner with an appreciative houseguest. But Maya noticed the small things. Sophia used the good plates without asking, opened a bottle of wine Maya had been saving for a special occasion, and dominated the conversation with stories about her relationship drama. David listened politely, but Maya could see him growing tired of the self-focused narrative. After dinner, Sophia announced her intention to go out and meet friends for drinks, leaving Maya and David to clean up. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, David turned to Maya with a concerned expression. "How are you feeling about all this?" he asked gently. Maya sank onto her couch with exhaustion she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "Honestly, I feel like I've been steamrolled. This morning, I was having a quiet weekend at home, and now my entire living situation has changed." David sat beside her, offering the kind of supportive presence that made Maya appreciate their relationship. "It sounds like she didn't give you much choice in the matter." "She didn't, but she's my sister, and she was in a crisis. What was I supposed to do, leave her homeless?" "There's a difference between helping someone in crisis and having them move into your home indefinitely," David pointed out carefully. "Did she explore other options before asking to stay here?" Maya considered the question. "I don't think so. I think she saw this as the easiest solution and didn't consider how it might affect me." They talked for another hour about boundaries, family obligations, and the challenge of saying no to people who'd never learned to accept that word. David didn't criticize Sophia directly, but he helped Maya process her feelings without judgment. When Sophia returned at nearly midnight, she was loud and cheerful in the way that suggested several drinks with her friends. Maya heard her moving around the bathroom, apparently unconcerned with the fact that the walls were thin and Maya had to work in the morning. Lying in bed later, Maya stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine 8 weeks of this arrangement. Already, the peaceful sanctuary she'd worked so hard to create felt compromised. But backing out of her agreement after one day seemed impossible, especially when Sophia had nowhere else to go. The first week established patterns that would define the rest of Sophia's stay. She treated Maya's home like a hotel, using amenities without replacing them, leaving messes for Maya to clean, and showing no awareness of how her presence affected the household routine. Maya would come home from work to find dishes in the sink, towels on the bathroom floor, and evidence of Sophia's daily beauty routine scattered across every surface. When she raised these issues, Sophia was apologetic but not corrective. She'd promised to be more mindful while continuing exactly the same behaviors. The financial contribution they'd agreed upon materialized sporadically and insufficiently. Sophia would occasionally buy groceries, but only items she wanted to eat, leaving Maya to purchase everything else. When Maya mentioned this discrepancy, Sophia would claim to be between payments from modeling gigs or waiting for money from Richard. The worst violation was the gradual expansion of Sophia's claim on the house. She rearranged furniture in the living room for better natural light during her morning yoga routine. She moved Maya's books to make room for her own magazines and beauty products. She invited friends over without asking, treating Maya's home as her own entertaining space. Each individual transgression was minor enough that objecting seemed petty, but cumulatively, they created a sense that Maya was a guest in her own home. The boundaries she'd established were being eroded gradually and systematically. David's visits became less frequent and more strained. Sophia had a talent for inserting herself into their conversations and activities, either through direct participation or through dramatic crises that required immediate attention. Maya found herself apologizing constantly for her sister's behavior while feeling powerless to change it. 3 weeks into the arrangement, Maya received a call at work that would prove to be the beginning of the end. Her phone rang during a project meeting, and she almost didn't answer it when she saw Sophia's name on the screen. But something about the timing made her step out of the conference room. Maya, thank God you answered. Sophia's voice was breathless with excitement. I have incredible news. You remember Marcus, the gallery owner I met last weekend? Well, he's offered me a job coordinating events for his new space in Chelsea. Can you believe it? Maya felt a surge of relief. A job meant Sophia could afford her own place and move out on schedule. That's wonderful news, Sophia. Congratulations. Thank you. I'm so excited. The only tiny complication is that the job doesn't start for 6 weeks, and he wants me to spend some time observing operations at his other locations first. Unpaid training, you know how it is. Maya's relief evaporated. What does that mean for your timeline to move out? Well, that's what I wanted to discuss with you. I was hoping I could extend my stay by just a month or two while I get established in this new position. I promise it won't be like before. I'll have purpose and direction, and once I start earning money, I'll contribute much more to expenses. The request felt like a betrayal of their original agreement, but Maya was standing in her office building hallway with colleagues walking past. She couldn't have the confrontation this conversation deserved in such a public setting. Sophia, we agreed on 2 months maximum. You've been there 3 weeks already. I know, and I'm so grateful for your flexibility, but this job opportunity is exactly what I need to get back on my feet. You wouldn't want me to turn down a career opportunity just to meet an arbitrary deadline, would you? The manipulation was so blatant that Maya felt insulted by Sophia's assumption that it would work. But she also felt trapped by the public setting and the implication that opposing Sophia's career goals made Maya unsupportive. We'll talk about this when I get home, Maya said firmly. I can't discuss it properly right now. Of course, I completely understand. But Maya, this is really important to me.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I hope you'll consider how much this opportunity means for my future. Maya returned to her meeting with her concentration completely shot. The conversation confirmed what she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. Sophia had no intention of leaving on schedule. The 2-month agreement had been a meaningless gesture designed to get Maya to agree to the initial arrangement. The confrontation Maya had been dreading was finally inevitable. That evening, Maya drove home through Queens traffic with her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The familiar streets of her neighborhood, usually a source of comfort after long days at the construction site, felt different now. Instead of anticipating the peace of her own space, she was dreading another negotiation about boundaries that should never have needed to be negotiated. The house looked the same from the outside, but Maya could see evidence of Sophia's expanding presence even from the driveway. There were additional cars parked on the street that belonged to her sister's friends, and the warm glow from the living room windows suggested company that Maya hadn't authorized. Opening her front door, Maya was greeted by the sound of laughter and conversation that immediately set her teeth on edge. Her living room had been rearranged again, with furniture pushed against the walls to create more social space. Sophia sat in the center of Maya's couch, surrounded by 3 women Maya recognized from previous encounters, all of them holding wine glasses and speaking in the animated tones of people several drinks into their evening. Maya stood in her own doorway, feeling like an intruder. The women noticed her arrival with the kind of polite acknowledgement typically reserved for service staff, offering brief waves before returning to their conversation about weekend plans in the Hamptons. Sophia, however, jumped up with theatrical enthusiasm. "Maya, perfect timing!
I was just telling everyone about your amazing hospitality. Girls, this is my incredible sister who's been so generous about letting me stay here during my transition. The introduction made Maya's jaw clench. Sophia was presenting the arrangement as Maya's generous gift rather than Sophia's urgent need, rewriting the narrative to make herself appear grateful rather than demanding. "Hi," Maya said tersely, making no effort to join the conversation. "Sophia, can we talk privately?" "Of course. Let me just finish this story about Marcus and his gallery space. You're going to love this, Maya. It's exactly the kind of artistic environment I've always dreamed of working in." Maya waited by the kitchen entrance while Sophia launched into a detailed description of her new job opportunity, the same one she'd called about earlier, but now embellished with additional details about the prestigious artists she'd be working with and the networking opportunities it would provide. Her friends responded with appropriate enthusiasm, asking questions that allowed Sophia to expand on her narrative of career breakthrough and artistic fulfillment. Maya noticed that none of them inquired about practical details like salary, start date, or whether Sophia had actually been formally offered the position. 20 minutes passed before Sophia finally concluded her performance and followed Maya into the kitchen. Even then, she left the door open and continued speaking at a volume that suggested she wanted her audience to overhear their conversation. "Isn't it exciting?" Sophia gushed, refilling her wine glass from a bottle Maya didn't recognize and hadn't purchased. "After all these months of uncertainty, everything is finally falling into place. I feel like the universe is rewarding me for taking that leap of faith with Richard." Maya poured herself a glass of water and leaned against her own counter, studying her sister's flushed face and bright eyes. "Tell me more about this job. What exactly will you be doing, and when do you start?" "Well, it's an events coordination position, but really, it's so much more than that. Marcus says I have an intuitive understanding of aesthetic presentation that can't be taught. I'll be working with artists to plan gallery openings, managing guest lists, coordinating with caterers and media contacts. It's exactly the kind of creative, high-level work I've always been meant to do." The description was vague enough to mean anything or nothing, and Maya noticed that Sophia still hadn't answered the question about timing. "And the start date?" "That's the beautiful part. Marcus wants me to really understand his vision before I officially begin, so I'll be spending time at his other locations, learning the business from the ground up. It shows how much he values my potential contribution." "Sophia, when will you actually start earning money from this job?" The direct question seemed to catch Sophia off guard. "Well, the unpaid training period is probably 6 to 8 weeks, and then I'll transition into the full position. But Maya, this is about so much more than immediate income. This is about building a career in the art world, establishing connections with influential people, creating a foundation for long-term success." Maya felt a familiar sense of unreality that always accompanied conversations with Sophia about work. Her sister had a talent for temporary, unpaid positions as career opportunities, and for unemployment sound like strategic positioning. "So you'll be working without pay for 2 months, and you want to extend your stay here during that time." "It's an investment in my future," Sophia said, her tone becoming slightly defensive. "Some opportunities require short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. I thought you of all people would understand that, given how much time and money you've invested in this house." The comparison was insulting and revealing. Maya had invested her own time and money in her own property. Sophia was asking Maya to invest in Sophia's theoretical future while contributing nothing to the arrangement. "Sophia, we agreed on 2 months maximum. You've been here 3 weeks, which means you have 5 weeks left. That time frame hasn't changed." Sophia's expression shifted from enthusiastic to wounded. "I can't believe you're being so rigid about this. We're talking about my career, my future. Don't you want me to succeed?" "I want you to succeed," replied carefully, "but not at the expense of our agreement or my peace of mind." "Your peace of mind?" Sophia's voice rose slightly, causing the conversation in the living room to pause. "Maya, what exactly am I doing that's disturbing your peace of mind? I've been nothing but considerate since I've been here." Maya looked around her kitchen, noting the wine stains on her countertop, the expensive face mask residue in her sink, and the collection of Sophia's beauty products that had migrated from the bathroom to cover most of the available surface space. You've had friends over 4 times this week without asking. You've rearranged my furniture. You're using my personal items without permission. And you've contributed maybe $60 to household expenses while running up utilities and eating food I've purchased. I didn't realize I needed permission to invite friends to a place where I'm living, Sophia replied coolly. And I've been contributing what I can. Just because I don't have your stable income doesn't mean I'm not trying to help. The conversation was taking a familiar shape, with Sophia deflecting specific concerns by focusing on Maya's tone or motivation. Maya recognized the pattern and felt her frustration building. This isn't about income levels, it's about respect and consideration. When you live in someone else's home, you ask before making changes. You contribute proportionally to your usage. You don't treat shared spaces like your personal entertainment area. Someone else's home, Sophia repeated, her voice carrying clearly to the living room now. Maya, I'm your sister. This isn't some landlord-tenant relationship. We're family. The appeal to family loyalty was Sophia's ultimate weapon, deployed whenever logical arguments failed. Maya had spent years allowing this trump card to end conversations that needed to continue. Being family doesn't mean I don't deserve basic consideration in my own home, Maya said firmly.
Your own home, Sophia echoed with a bitter laugh. God, Maya, do you hear yourself? When did you become so selfish and property-obsessed? The Maya I grew up with would never prioritize real estate over family relationships. The accusation of selfishness for wanting basic respect in her own house crystallized something Maya had been struggling to articulate for weeks. This wasn't about generosity or family loyalty. It was about Sophia's inability to recognize that other people had legitimate needs and boundaries. I'm not prioritizing property over family, Maya said, her voice steady despite her rising anger. I'm asking for the same consideration you'd show to any friend whose couch you were sleeping on. Any friend? Sophia's eyes flashed with genuine hurt now. Is that what I am to you? Just some friend crashing on your couch? Maya realized she was trapped in a conversation where every reasonable boundary she attempted to establish was reframed as a personal attack on their relationship. Sophia had perfected the art of making her own unreasonable behavior seem like Maya's problem. You're my sister, Maya said carefully, but that doesn't give you unlimited rights to my space and resources. Unlimited rights? Sophia's voice was approaching a volume that would be clearly audible to her friends. Maya, I asked to stay for 2 months while I got back on my feet. You agreed. Now I'm asking for a small extension because of a career opportunity, and you're acting like I'm trying to steal your house. You didn't ask for an extension. You called me at work and informed me that you'd be staying longer because of this job opportunity. Because I was excited to share good news with my sister. Sophia's eyes were beginning to fill with tears, a reaction that Maya knew was both genuine and calculated. I thought you'd be happy for me. Maya felt the familiar weight of guilt that Sophia wielded so effectively. But underneath the guilt was a growing anger that Maya had been suppressing for years. She was tired of being manipulated, tired of having her reasonable requests reframed as character flaws, tired of apologizing for wanting basic respect. I am happy that you have a potential job opportunity, but I'm not willing to extend our agreement indefinitely while you pursue unpaid work. Indefinitely? Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her carefully applied makeup. I asked for 6 more weeks. That's hardly indefinite. You asked for 6 to 8 weeks on top of the 5 weeks you have left. That's 3 to 4 months total, not the 2 months we originally agreed on. Sophia stared at Maya as if she'd said something shocking. You're actually going to kick me out for the sake of a few extra weeks? I'm going to hold you to the agreement we made, Maya corrected. The agreement you insisted was perfectly reasonable when you needed somewhere to stay. The sound of approaching footsteps from the living room interrupted their argument. One of Sophia's friends appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression carefully neutral, but her presence clearly intended to provide moral support. Everything okay in here? The woman asked with false casualness. We heard raised voices. Maya felt a surge of humiliation at having her private family conflict witnessed by strangers who had no investment in finding a fair solution. She also realized that Sophia's choice to conduct this argument at high volume while entertaining guests was itself a manipulation tactic. "We're fine," Maya said shortly, "just discussing household logistics." "Actually, we're not fine," Sophia interjected, turning to her friend with a wounded expression. "Maya is asking me to leave in 5 weeks, right when I'm finally getting my life together." The friend's expression shifted to sympathy and concern. "Oh no, that's terrible timing. Can't you work something out? It's so hard to find good housing in the city right now." Maya realized she was being cast as the villain in a drama she hadn't agreed to participate in. Sophia's friend had no knowledge of their original agreement, Sophia's failure to contribute financially, or the ways her presence had disrupted Maya's life. She only saw one sister refusing to help another during a difficult transition. "It's complicated," Maya said, not wanting to detail their private arrangements for an audience. "It's really not complicated," Sophia said, fresh tears flowing now. "I'm asking my sister for a little flexibility during the most important career opportunity of my life, and she's prioritizing her convenience over my future." Maya felt something snap inside her chest. The blatant manipulation, the public humiliation, the complete rewriting of their situation to cast Maya as unreasonable, all combined to push her past a breaking point she didn't know she had. "Your convenience?" Maya's voice rose for the first time in the conversation. "Sophia, you've been living in my house for 3 weeks without paying rent, using my utilities, eating my food, rearranging my furniture, and treating my home like your personal social club. You've contributed $60 while running up hundreds in expenses. You violated every boundary we established and broken every promise you made about being a considerate house guest. And now you want to extend this arrangement indefinitely while working for free at a job that may or may not actually exist?" The kitchen fell silent. Sophia's friend looked uncomfortable, clearly regretting her decision to intervene. Sophia herself seemed shocked by Maya's uncharacteristic directness. "The job exists," Sophia said weakly. "Marcus is a respected gallery owner." "Then ask Marcus to house you while you work for him for free," Maya replied. "Or ask one of your friends in Manhattan with their proper apartments and doormen. But our agreement stands. You have 5 weeks to find alternative housing." Maya left the kitchen without waiting for a response, walking through her living room where the remaining guests were pretending not to have overheard the entire argument. She went to her bedroom and closed the door, sitting on her bed with shaking hands and trying to process what had just happened. She had finally said no to Sophia, clearly. She had refused to be manipulated by tears and guilt trips. She had stood up for herself in her own home. But instead of feeling empowered, Maya felt sick with anxiety and guilt. The sounds from the living room suggested that Sophia's friends were offering comfort and support, probably reinforcing Sophia's version of events, where Maya was being unreasonably inflexible. Maya could imagine the conversation, the way her boundaries would be reframed as coldness and her reasonable expectations presented as impossible demands. An hour later, long after the guests had left, Sophia knocked softly on Maya's bedroom door. Her voice was subdued when she spoke through the wood. "Maya, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding." Maya opened the door to find Sophia with red-rimmed eyes and a contrite expression. Her earlier anger seemed to have been replaced by a more strategic approach. "I'm sorry about earlier," Sophia began. "I should never have discussed our private business in front of other people. That was wrong of me." The apology was carefully crafted to address Maya's least important concern while avoiding the substantive issues they'd been arguing about.
Maya waited for more, but Sophia seemed to consider this sufficient. "Thank you for acknowledging that," Maya said. "But the real issue isn't who overheard our conversation. It's that you're trying to change our agreement without my consent." "I understand why you're upset," Sophia continued, employing the tone of someone being extremely reasonable. "I should have approached you differently about the job situation. But Maya, I need you to understand how important this opportunity is for me. This could be the beginning of everything I've been working toward." Maya noticed that Sophia kept referring to the unpaid position as an opportunity rather than a job, and to her current unemployment as working toward something. The linguistic sleight of hand was designed to make Maya's practical concerns seem petty in comparison to Sophia's artistic aspirations. I understand that you're excited about this position, Maya said carefully, but excitement doesn't change our original agreement or address the problems we've been having. What problems? Sophia asked with apparent sincerity. I thought things were going well. I've been trying so hard to be a good house guest. The complete disconnect between Sophia's perception and Maya's experience was almost breathtaking. Either Sophia was genuinely unaware of how her behavior affected others, or she was skilled at selective memory when it served her purposes. Sophia, you've taken over my living room for social gatherings 4 times this week. You've used my expensive face wash and replaced it with drugstore alternatives. You've eaten the meals I meal prepped for work lunches. You've left wet towels on my hardwood floors. You've invited people to use my bathroom who don't live here. You've moved my personal belongings to make room for your things. Maya listed each example in a calm, factual tone, watching Sophia's expression shift from confusion to defensiveness. Those are all such small things, Sophia protested. I didn't realize you were keeping track of every little detail. Maya, when people live together, there are always minor adjustments and compromises. Minor adjustments? Maya felt her carefully controlled composure beginning to slip again. Sophia, you've essentially colonized my home. I feel like a visitor in my own space. That's a very dramatic way to put it, Sophia replied with a slight frown. I've just been trying to feel comfortable here, the way you said I should when you agreed to let me stay. Maya realized they were having fundamentally different conversations. Sophia was framing every violation of Maya's boundaries as a reasonable attempt to feel at home, while Maya was trying to explain why feeling at home couldn't mean disregarding the homeowner's needs entirely. There's a difference between feeling comfortable and taking over, Maya said. Comfortable means using the space respectfully while understanding that it belongs to someone else. Taking over means rearranging everything to suit your preferences without considering how it affects the person who actually lives here. I never meant to take over anything, Sophia said, her voice taking on the wounded tone that usually ended these conversations. I was just trying to contribute to making this a nice space for both of us. By replacing my things with your things and inviting your friends to treat my home like their hangout spot, my friends are lovely people who've complimented your house numerous times, Sophia replied, clearly not understanding Maya's concern. I thought you'd enjoy meeting them and expanding your social circle. Maya stared at her sister, recognizing that they exist in completely different realities. In Sophia's world, taking over someone's living space was a generous contribution to their social life. In Maya's world, it was a violation of basic boundaries and respect. Sophia, I don't want my social circle expanded by strangers who treat my home like a public venue. I want to be asked before you invite people over, and I want to have the option to say no. Asked? Sophia repeated the word as if Maya had suggested something unreasonable. Maya, I can't live somewhere where I have to get permission for every single thing I do. That's not how normal roommate situations work. This isn't a normal roommate situation, Maya said firmly. This is my home that I'm allowing you to stay in temporarily during an emergency. The fact that you don't see the difference is exactly the problem. Sophia was quiet for a moment, apparently processing this distinction. When she spoke again, her tone was more measured. I think I understand what you're saying. You want me to treat this more like I'm a guest than like I live here. Yes, Maya said, relieved that Sophia finally seemed to grasp the basic concept. But Maya, if I have to live like a guest for the next 5 weeks, walking on eggshells and asking permission for everything, I'm going to be miserable. And if I'm miserable, this arrangement isn't going to work for either of us. The statement revealed exactly what Maya had suspected. Sophia couldn't envision a living arrangement where her comfort wasn't the primary consideration. The idea of respecting someone else's space and preferences was presented as an unreasonable hardship rather than basic courtesy. I'm not asking you to walk on eggshells, Maya said. I'm asking you to be considerate, to ask before making changes, to contribute financially, to clean up after yourself, to respect that this is my home, not ours. Those all sound like walking on eggshells to me, Sophia replied. Maya, when I agreed to stay here, I thought we'd be living together as sisters, not as landlord and tenant.
Maya felt the conversation circling back to familiar territory, where Sophia's unreasonable expectations were reframed as family loyalty, and Maya's boundaries were presented as cold formality. Being sisters doesn't exempt you from basic consideration, Maya said for what felt like the 100th time. Doesn't it, though? Sophia asked with apparent sincerity. I mean, isn't the whole point of family that you don't have to perform politeness and boundaries all the time? That you can just be yourself and know you're loved anyway? The question revealed a worldview where being yourself meant disregarding other people's needs, and being loved meant accepting unlimited imposition. Maya realized that Sophia genuinely believed family relationships should be one-way streets, where she received unconditional support while offering nothing in return. Family means caring about each other's well-being, replied, which includes caring about how your behavior affects the people who are helping you. Of course I care about your well-being, Sophia said with genuine seeming hurt. Maya, everything I've done here has been about building a closer relationship with you. We never got to live together as adults, and I thought this could be a wonderful bonding experience. Maya looked at her sister's earnest expression and wondered if Sophia actually believed this narrative. Did she genuinely think that taking over Maya's home and violating her boundaries was relationship building? Or was this another manipulation tactic disguised as emotional vulnerability? If you want to build a closer relationship with me, Maya said slowly, start by respecting the relationship I have with my own home. Your relationship with your home, Sophia replied with a slight laugh. Maya, it's a house, it's not a person. The dismissive comment crystallized everything Maya had been struggling to explain. For Sophia, Maya's house was just a convenient place to stay. For Maya, it represented years of sacrifice, planning, and dreams realized through her own effort. The inability to understand that distinction explained why Sophia felt entitled to change everything to suit her preferences. This house represents 8 years of saving, 18 months of renovation, and the first space I've ever controlled completely, Maya said.
It's not just shelter. It's the physical manifestation of my independence and hard work. I do understand that, Sophia said, though her tone suggested otherwise. And I think it's wonderful that you've been able to buy a house. But Maya, I'm not trying to take it away from you. I'm just trying to feel comfortable while I'm staying here. Your comfort has come at the expense of mine, Maya pointed out, and you don't seem to see that as a problem. Because I didn't realize it was a problem, Sophia exclaimed. You never said anything before tonight. If you'd told me you were unhappy, I would have adjusted my behavior. Maya thought about the dozens of small comments she'd made over the past 3 weeks, the gentle requests to clean up, the polite suggestions about asking before inviting friends over, the careful hints about financial contributions. All of these had been ignored or dismissed with promises that were never kept. I did say things, Maya replied. You didn't listen. I was listening, Sophia protested, but you were so indirect about everything. You'd say things like, it would be nice if, or maybe we could try, instead of just telling me what you needed. The criticism stung because it contained an element of truth. Maya had been indirect, partly out of politeness, and partly because direct confrontation with Sophia usually led to tears and accusations of cruelty. You're right, Maya admitted. I should have been more direct. But Sophia, when someone is staying in your home as a favor, you shouldn't have to spell out basic considerations like cleaning up after yourself or asking before inviting strangers over. Maybe not, Sophia conceded, but different people have different standards and expectations. What seems obvious to you might not be obvious to me. Maya felt like they were finally having a productive conversation, one where Sophia acknowledged some responsibility for their problems. But she also sensed this was another strategic retreat, a temporary concession designed to diffuse Maya's anger without committing to actual change. So, going forward, Maya said carefully, are you willing to follow the boundaries we originally established? Ask before making changes, contribute financially, respect my privacy, clean up after yourself? Of course, Sophia agreed readily. I want this to work for both of us.
But Maya, I also need you to understand that I'm going through a really difficult time right now. The breakup with Richard, the uncertainty about my future, starting over at 33, it's all been overwhelming. I might not always be as considerate as I should be because I'm dealing with so much stress. The acknowledgement came with a built-in excuse for future violations, and Maya recognized the pattern. Sophia would agree to boundaries when pressed, but would have reasons why those boundaries didn't apply when she violated them. I understand that you're stressed, Maya said, but stress doesn't excuse inconsiderate behavior toward the person who's helping you. You're absolutely right, Sophia agreed. I'll do better, I promise. Maya wanted to believe her sister, but 3 weeks of experience suggested that Sophia's promises had a very short shelf life. Still, the conversation felt like progress, and Maya decided to take the agreement at face value. Thank you, Maya said. I appreciate that. So does this mean you'll consider extending my stay for the gallery job? Sophia asked hopefully. Maya almost laughed at the speed with which Sophia returned to her original agenda. The entire conversation about boundaries and consideration had been a prelude to renewing her request for special accommodation. No, Maya said firmly. Our original agreement stands. You have 5 weeks to find alternative housing. Sophia's face fell, but she nodded with apparent acceptance. I understand. I'll start looking for places right away. Maya felt relief mixed with suspicion. Sophia's acceptance seemed too easy, too immediate. In her experience, Sophia didn't give up on things she wanted without more of a fight. Good, Maya said. I'm glad we understand each other. They said goodnight with an awkward hug, and Maya returned to her bedroom feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe Sophia had finally understood Maya's position. Maybe the next 5 weeks would be manageable. Maybe their relationship could survive this temporary arrangement. Maya should have known better. The following morning, Maya woke to the sound of Sophia on the phone in the living room, her voice carrying clearly through the thin walls. She was talking to someone about apartment hunting, discussing neighborhoods and price ranges with the kind of detailed knowledge that suggested she'd been researching options. Maya felt encouraged by this evidence that Sophia was taking her conversation seriously. She got dressed for work quietly, trying not to disturb her sister's call, and slipped out of the house without interrupting. At work, Maya found herself in a better mood than she'd experienced in weeks. The confrontation with Sophia had been unpleasant, but setting clear boundaries felt like reclaiming control over her own life. Her coworkers noticed the change, commenting that she seemed more relaxed and focused. Maya threw herself into her current project with renewed energy, working late to catch up on tasks that had been neglected during weeks of distraction. When she finally left the office at 8 p.m., she was tired but satisfied with her productivity. Driving home, Maya found herself looking forward to a quiet evening in her own space. Maybe she and Sophia could have dinner together and talk about normal things, like sisters who enjoyed each other's company. Maybe this crisis had been the push their relationship needed to become more honest and balanced. Maya's optimism lasted until she turned onto her street and saw the unfamiliar cars filling her driveway and lining the curb in front of her house. Warm light poured from every window, and she could hear music and laughter from the sidewalk. Her heart sank as she realized Sophia was hosting another party, less than 24 hours after promising to be more considerate. Maya parked 2 blocks away, unable to access her own driveway, and walked home with growing anger. Opening her front door, Maya was hit by the smell of cigarettes and the sight of at least 15 people crowded into her small living room. The furniture had been rearranged again to accommodate more guests, and her coffee table was covered with wine bottles, glasses, and what appeared to be cocaine residue. Maya stood in her own doorway, invisible to the party guests who were deep in animated conversations about art, politics, and weekend plans in expensive vacation destinations. She recognized some faces from previous gatherings, but most were strangers who had been invited into her home without her knowledge or consent. Sophia was holding court near the kitchen, wearing a designer dress Maya had never seen before and gesturing dramatically as she told a story that her audience laughed appreciatively. She looked up and spotted Maya, her expression shifting from animated joy to guilty surprise. "Maya," Sophia called out with forced enthusiasm, "you're home. Everyone, this is my amazing sister Maya, the one I was telling you about." The party guests turned toward Maya with polite interest, offering waves and compliments about her home. Their casual assumption that they were welcome there made Maya's skin crawl with indignation.
Can I speak with you privately? Maya asked Sophia, her voice tight with controlled anger. Of course, Sophia replied brightly.
Let me just finish introducing you to everyone. Marcus is here, the gallery owner I mentioned. You have to meet him. Maya didn't want to meet Marcus or anyone else. She wanted these strangers out of her house immediately. But causing a scene in front of 15 people seemed like it would create more problems than it solved. In the kitchen, Maya said firmly. Now. Sophia followed her with obvious reluctance, leaving the kitchen door open and continuing to speak at a volume that ensured their conversation would be overheard. Isn't this exciting? Sophia began before Maya could speak. Marcus brought some of his most important artists to meet me, and they're all so impressed with your house. They keep saying what wonderful aesthetic sense you have. Maya stared at her sister in disbelief. Sophia, what is this? It's a small gathering to celebrate my new position. Marcus wanted to introduce me to some key people in the art world, and I thought your house would be the perfect setting. It's so much more intimate and authentic than some sterile restaurant or hotel bar. You promised me last night that you would ask before inviting people over. I tried to call you at work, but your assistant said you were in meetings all day, Sophia replied smoothly. And this was such a last-minute opportunity that I couldn't wait for the perfect time to discuss it. Maya pulled out her phone and checked her call log. There were no missed calls from Sophia, no voicemails, no text messages. The lie was blatant and easily disprovable. You didn't call me, Maya said flatly. Sophia paused, clearly not expecting Maya to fact-check her story. I thought I did. Maybe I dialed the wrong number. Maya, does it really matter? This is such an important networking opportunity for me. It matters because you lied to me. It matters because you promised to respect my boundaries and then violated them 12 hours later. It matters because there are strangers doing drugs on my coffee table. Drugs? Sophia looked genuinely surprised. Maya, these are successful artists and gallery professionals. They're not doing drugs. There's white powder residue on my coffee table, and it's not baby powder. Sophia glanced toward the living room with what appeared to be sincere concern. I had no idea. If someone brought something inappropriate, I'll ask them to leave immediately. The offer to police her guest's behavior missed the point entirely. Maya didn't want Sophia to manage the party better. She wanted the party to not exist in her home without her permission. Sophia, I want everyone to leave, right now. Leave? Sophia's voice rose in dismay. Maya, I can't ask people to leave in the middle of a networking event. Some of these people flew in from Los Angeles specifically for this gathering. Then you should have hosted it somewhere appropriate, like Marcus's gallery or a restaurant you can afford. Marcus's gallery is being renovated, and restaurants are so impersonal for this kind of intimate introduction, Sophia explained as if Maya were missing obvious social cues. This house is perfect for what we're trying to accomplish. Maya felt like she was trapped in a nightmare version of her own life. Perfect for what you're trying to accomplish? I never agreed to turn my home into a venue for your career networking. It's one evening, Sophia pleaded, a few hours to help me build relationships that could change my entire future. Isn't that worth a small sacrifice? The characterization of Maya's comfort and privacy as a small sacrifice compared to Sophia's career ambitions crystallized the fundamental selfishness that had driven their entire relationship. Maya realized that no boundary would ever be respected if it conflicted with something Sophia wanted. No, Maya said firmly, it's not worth it. I want your guests to leave within the next 30 minutes. Sophia stared at Maya as if she'd suggested something unthinkable. 30 minutes? Maya, that's not enough time to wrap up conversations gracefully. People will think I'm incredibly rude. You are being incredibly rude, Maya replied, to me, in my own home. I'm trying to build a career, Sophia's voice cracked with emotion. This is the most important night of my professional life, and you're sabotaging it because you can't handle a little noise for a few hours.
Maya looked at her sister's tear-filled eyes and realized that Sophia genuinely believed Maya was being unreasonable. In Sophia's worldview, Maya's desire for privacy and respect in her own home was less important than Sophia's networking opportunity. 1 hour, Maya said, making a final compromise she immediately regretted. Everyone leaves by 10 p.m. "Thank you," Sophia said with visible relief. "I promise this won't happen again." Maya returned to her bedroom, closing the door behind her and trying to block out the sounds of the party that continued in her living room. She called David, needing to talk to someone who would understand her frustration. "She's hosting another party?" David asked in disbelief. "The day after you had that conversation about boundaries?" "She claims she tried to call me for permission, but there are no missed calls on my phone," Maya explained. "And she keeps justifying it as career networking, like that makes it acceptable." "Maya, this isn't going to get better." David has shown you repeatedly that she doesn't respect your boundaries. Why do you think the next 5 weeks will be any different?" The question highlighted something Maya had been trying to avoid acknowledging. She had been hoping that clear communication would solve their problems, but Sophia's behavior suggested that the problem wasn't misunderstanding, but fundamental disrespect. "I don't know," admitted, "but she's my sister, and she doesn't have anywhere else to go." "She has plenty of other options," David pointed out. "She just doesn't want to pursue them because staying with you is easier and cheaper." Maya knew David was right, but the idea of putting Sophia out on the street felt cruel and impossible. Family loyalty was a powerful force, even when it was completely one-sided. The party finally ended at 11:30, 90 minutes past Maya's deadline. She heard cars leaving, voices saying goodbye, and finally, the sound of Sophia cleaning up. Maya pretended to be asleep when Sophia knocked softly on her bedroom door to apologize and explain why the evening had run longer than planned. The next morning, Maya woke to find her living room restored to its original arrangement and the surfaces cleaned of all evidence from the previous night's gathering. A bouquet of expensive flowers sat on her kitchen counter with a note from Sophia thanking her for her patience and understanding. Maya recognized the gesture as Sophia's version of an apology, one that acknowledged wrongdoing while avoiding actual accountability. The flowers were beautiful, but they didn't address the fundamental problem of Sophia's repeated violations of Maya's boundaries. At work, Maya found herself distracted and irritable. She made mistakes on calculations that required her to stay late to fix them, and she snapped at a junior engineer who was only trying to help. The stress of the living situation was affecting her professional performance, something that had never happened before in her carefully managed life. Maya loved her job and took pride in her reputation as a reliable, even-tempered project manager. The idea that Sophia's behavior was compromising her work performance added a new dimension to her frustration. That evening, Maya came home to find Sophia in the kitchen, cooking an elaborate dinner with ingredients that must have cost more than Maya's weekly grocery budget. The gesture was clearly intended as another peace offering, but Maya couldn't help wondering who had paid for the expensive wine and imported cheese that accompanied the meal. "I wanted to make you a special dinner to say thank you for being so understanding about last night," Sophia said brightly. "I know it was an inconvenience, and I really appreciate your support." Maya accepted the dinner gracefully, trying to enjoy the well-prepared food and Sophia's unusually attentive conversation. For 2 hours, they talked about work, books, travel plans, and shared memories from childhood. It was the kind of sisterly evening Maya had hoped they might have when Sophia first moved in. But underlying the pleasant conversation was Maya's awareness that this was performance rather than genuine connection. Sophia was being charming and considerate because she needed Maya's continued cooperation, not because she had experienced any fundamental change in perspective. Maya went to bed that night feeling like she was losing her mind. The contrast between Sophia's manipulative behavior and her genuine moments of warmth made it impossible to maintain consistent anger or clear boundaries. The pattern continued for the rest of the week. Sophia would violate boundaries, offer elaborate apologies, be temporarily considerate, and then gradually return to entitled behavior.
Maya found herself constantly off balance, never sure which version of her sister she would encounter. Friday brought the incident that would finally force Maya to acknowledge what David and her own instincts had been telling her for weeks. Maya arrived home from work that Friday evening to find her front door standing wide open. Music drifted from inside the house, along with the sound of running water and what appeared to be construction noise. Her first thought was that someone had broken in, but Sophia's car was in the driveway alongside a large truck she didn't recognize. Walking through her open front door, Maya discovered her living room in complete chaos. The walls had been stripped of her carefully chosen artwork and photographs. Her built-in bookshelves, the ones she'd constructed herself over weeks of patient work, were being dismantled by two men in work clothes. Her books lay scattered across the floor in cardboard boxes, and her vintage ceramics collection had been packed away in newspaper. Sophia stood in the center of the destruction, directing the workers with animated gestures and discussing color schemes with a woman Maya had never seen before. She wore paint-splattered clothes and held a tablet displaying what appeared to be interior design renderings. "What is happening?" Maya asked, her voice barely audible over the noise of power tools. Sophia turned with a radiant smile, as if Maya had walked into a surprise party rather than the systematic destruction of her home. "Maya, perfect timing. I want you to meet Miranda. She's an interior designer who specializes in gallery-style residential spaces. We're giving your living room a complete makeover." Maya stared at the chaos surrounding her, trying to process what she was seeing. Her bookshelf, which had taken her 3 weekends to build and represented one of her proudest DIY accomplishments, lay in pieces on the floor. The walls bore rectangular patches where her artwork had hung for months. "You're tearing apart my house," Maya said, still struggling to believe what was happening. "We're upgrading it," Sophia corrected enthusiastically. "Miranda has incredible ideas for creating a more sophisticated aesthetic. Open concept, minimalist design, perfect for entertaining. It's going to be absolutely stunning." Miranda stepped forward with professional confidence, apparently unaware that she was participating in the unauthorized renovation of someone else's home. "Your sister has excellent instincts for spatial relationships. We're removing the visual clutter to create clean lines and better flow." Maya looked at the scattered books that Miranda had characterized as visual clutter. These were her engineering textbooks, her novels, her reference materials, her carefully curated collection that represented years of reading and learning. They weren't clutter, they were the intellectual foundation of her life. "Stop," Maya said firmly, addressing the workers who were preparing to remove another shelf. "Everyone stop what you're doing right now." The men paused their work, looking to Sophia for clarification. Miranda consulted her tablet with a slight frown, as if Maya's interruption was an unexpected scheduling conflict. "Maya, I know change can be overwhelming, but you're going to love the finished result. We're creating a space that's worthy of your accomplishments." "By destroying the space I already created?" "By improving it," Sophia insisted. "Honestly, Maya, you've done amazing work on this house, but it's time to take it to the next level. Think about when you want to sell, or when you start dating someone seriously. David seems lovely, but he's not exactly the type who would appreciate elevated design aesthetics." The casual dismissal of David's taste, combined with the assumption that Maya's home needed improving to attract a different type of man, revealed layers of condescension that made Maya's vision blur with rage. "Get out," Maya said quietly. "What?" Sophia laughed nervously, apparently not hearing correctly. "Everyone, get out of my house right now," Maya repeated, her voice rising to carry over the background noise. Miranda looked confused, glancing between the sisters as if seeking clarification about the chain of command. The workers had stopped their demolition and were watching the confrontation with obvious discomfort. "Maya, you're being dramatic," Sophia said with forced calm. "Let's talk about this privately after Miranda and the guys finish for the day." "There's nothing to finish," Maya replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "This work was not authorized. These people need to leave immediately." "Not authorized?" Sophia's voice took on the wounded tone Maya knew so well. "Maya, I'm trying to do something wonderful for you. This renovation is my gift to thank you for letting me stay here." "Your gift?" Maya looked around at the destruction surrounding her. "You've torn apart my home without asking me? You've destroyed furniture I built myself? You've packed away my belongings and hired strangers to remake my space according to your preferences? Our preferences, corrected. I live here too, remember? I should have some input into how the space looks and functions. The casual claim of joint ownership over Maya's home was the final straw. Something crystallized in Maya's chest, a clarity she'd been avoiding for weeks of manipulation and boundary violations. You don't live here, Maya said with absolute finality. You're a guest who has overstayed her welcome, and now you're out. Sophia's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Out? Maya, you can't be serious.
We can fix this. We can put everything back exactly the way it was. Ma'am, one of the workers interrupted hesitantly, we're gonna need some clarification about who's authorizing this job. If there's a dispute about the work, we need to know before we continue. Maya turned to address the workers directly. I'm the homeowner. This work was not authorized by me. Please stop immediately and remove your equipment from my property. You heard her, Miranda said with professional efficiency, already gathering her materials. Pack it up, guys. We'll bill for the work completed so far. Bill who? Maya asked sharply. Miranda looked uncertain for the first time. Well, your sister said she would handle payment arrangements. Maya turned to Sophia with mounting incredulity. How exactly were you planning to pay for unauthorized renovations to my house? I was going to work something out, Sophia said vaguely. Maybe a payment plan, or you could contribute, since it benefits your property value. The assumption that Maya would pay for renovations she had never requested, designed to suit Sophia's aesthetic preferences, demonstrated a level of entitlement that left Maya speechless. Get out, Maya repeated, this time with ice-cold certainty. Pack your things and get out of my house tonight. Tonight? Sophia's voice cracked with genuine panic. Maya, it's Friday evening. I can't find a place to stay on such short notice. You should have thought about that before you decided to demolish my living room. It's not demolished, it's being updated, Sophia protested weakly. And I can call Miranda on Monday to put everything back the way it was. Maya looked at her scattered books, her dismantled furniture, and the rectangular patches on her walls where her artwork had hung. The violation felt so complete and personal that she wondered if her relationship with this space could ever be fully restored. The damage is already done, Maya said. I want you out. As the workers packed their equipment and Miranda gathered her design materials, Sophia made increasingly desperate attempts to negotiate. She offered to pay for the restoration herself, to find temporary accommodation while keeping her belongings at Maya's house, to limit her presence to evening hours when Maya was sleeping. Each offer revealed that Sophia still didn't understand the fundamental problem. This wasn't about inconvenience or scheduling conflicts. It was about respect, boundaries, and the basic acknowledgement that Maya had rights in her own home. I'll call Mom and Dad, Sophia threatened when her other tactics failed. They're going to be very disappointed in how you're treating family. Call them, Maya replied without hesitation. Tell them exactly what you did here today, and see if they think I'm being unreasonable. Sophia's expression faltered, perhaps recognizing that even their parents might struggle to defend the unauthorized demolition of Maya's home. But she rallied quickly, switching to her most effective weapon. Fine, Sophia said, tears beginning to flow. If you want to throw me out on the street during the most difficult period of my life, that's your choice. But don't expect me to forgive you for abandoning me when I needed you most. The emotional manipulation was expertly deployed, designed to make Maya feel guilty for establishing basic boundaries. In the past, Sophia's tears had been Maya's kryptonite, immediately triggering her protective instincts and willingness to compromise. But standing in the wreckage of her living room, surrounded by the evidence of Sophia's complete disregard for Maya's feelings and property, the tears felt calculated rather than genuine. I didn't abandon you, Maya said calmly. I offered you a place to stay for 2 months during an emergency. You've been here 4 weeks, and in that time, you violated every boundary we established, lied about your financial contributions, and now literally demolished my home without permission. I was trying to improve your home, Sophia sobbed. Everything I've done has been to help you.
Help me by packing away my books? Help me by tearing down furniture I built myself? Help me by hiring contractors I can't afford for renovations I never wanted? Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving streaks of mascara across her cheeks. I was trying to create a space we could both enjoy. There is no both, Maya said firmly. This is my house. My name is on the deed. My money pays the mortgage. My labor renovated every room. You are a temporary guest who has forgotten her place. The blunt reminder of their actual relationship seemed to shock Sophia into momentary silence. Maya realized that somewhere during the past month, Sophia had begun thinking of Maya's house as their shared space, subject to collaborative decision-making and joint aesthetic choices. I never forgot my place, Sophia said quietly. I just thought we were building something together. We weren't building anything, replied. You were staying here temporarily while you got back on your feet. That was the arrangement. The arrangement, Sophia repeated with bitter laugh. God, Maya, do you hear yourself? You sound like a landlord, not a sister. Maybe because you've been acting like a tenant who doesn't pay rent and ignores the lease terms. Sophia stared at Maya as if seeing her clearly for the first time. When did you become so cold and transactional about everything? When you made it necessary, Maya answered honestly. When family loyalty became a one-way street, where I give everything and you take whatever you want. The conversation was interrupted by Miranda's return to collect a forgotten measuring device. She moved quickly through the space, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding around her professional responsibilities. Ladies, I'll need final confirmation about billing by Monday, Miranda said diplomatically. The crew completed about 4 hours of work before we stopped. Send the bill to Sophia, Maya said without hesitation. She authorized the work without my knowledge or consent. Maya, you know I can't afford to pay contractors. I don't have that kind of money. Then you shouldn't have hired them, replied logically. Miranda left with promises to sort out the billing situation later, and the workers finished loading their equipment. Within an hour, Maya's house was quiet again, but the damage to her living room remained starkly visible. Sophia stood in the center of the chaos, seeming smaller and more vulnerable than Maya had ever seen her. For a moment, Maya felt a familiar tug of protective sympathy, the urge to comfort her sister and find a compromise that would ease Sophia's obvious distress. But then Maya looked at her scattered books and dismantled furniture, and her resolve hardened. Sophia's distress was the natural consequence of her own choices, not Maya's responsibility to fix. I need you 2 hours to pack. Can you give me that much? Maya nodded, feeling drained by the confrontation, but clear about her decision.
2 hours. And Sophia, I want the key back before you leave. Sophia's face crumpled at the mention of the key, the final symbol of her eviction from the space she'd begun to consider home. But she nodded without argument, disappearing into the guest room to begin the process of undoing a month of gradual colonization. Maya called David while Sophia packed, needing to talk to someone who would understand the magnitude of what had just happened. She hired contractors to renovate your house without asking? David repeated in disbelief. Maya, that's not just inconsiderate, it's completely unhinged. I keep thinking I'm overreacting, Maya admitted. She claims she was trying to help, trying to improve the space for both of us. By destroying things you built yourself? David's voice was gentle but firm. Maya, there's no universe where that's helpful. She crossed every possible line. Talking to David helped Maya process her own emotions and confirm that her response had been appropriate. She wasn't being cold or unreasonable. She was protecting herself from someone who had proven incapable of respecting basic boundaries. When Sophia emerged from the guest room 2 hours later, she was pulling the same suitcases she'd arrived with a month ago, but now she looked exhausted and defeated rather than confident and entitled. I called Marcus, she said without making eye contact. He said I can sleep on his couch for a few days while I figure out something permanent. Maya felt a mixture of relief that Sophia had found immediate shelter and suspicion about the sudden availability of Marcus's accommodation, but the details were no longer her responsibility to manage. Good, Maya said simply. I'm glad you have somewhere to go.
They loaded Sophia's belongings into her car in uncomfortable silence, the easy familiarity of their shared morning routines now replaced by the awkward formality of permanent departure. As Sophia prepared to leave, she turned back to Maya with one final attempt at reconciliation. "I really was trying to help," she said, her voice small and uncertain. "I know you don't believe me, but I thought you'd love what Miranda had planned." Maya looked at her sister's genuine confusion and realized that Sophia truly didn't understand why her actions had been wrong. The gap between their worldviews was so vast that communication had become impossible. "I believe you thought you were helping," Maya said carefully, "but help requires considering what the other person actually wants, not just what you think they should want." Sophia nodded as if she understood, but Maya could see the bewilderment in her eyes. Even now, Sophia couldn't grasp why Maya might prefer her own choices to professionally designed improvements. "Will you call me when you've calmed down?" Sophia asked hopefully. "When you're ready to work through this?" Maya considered the question seriously. Her anger would eventually fade, but the fundamental issues between them wouldn't disappear with time. Sophia would always be someone who took what she wanted and rationalized it as generosity. Maya would always be someone who needed boundaries and respect to feel safe in relationships. "I don't know," Maya answered honestly. "Right now, I need space to process everything that's happened." Sophia's face fell, but she didn't argue. She handed Maya the house key, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange, and then she was gone, driving away into the Friday evening traffic with her possessions and her wounded pride. Maya stood in her driveway for several minutes after Sophia's car disappeared, breathing the cool evening air and trying to absorb the reality of being alone in her house again. The silence felt profound after weeks of constant negotiation and conflict. Walking back inside, Maya surveyed the damage to her living room with a mixture of sadness and determination. Her books could be reshelved, her artwork could be rehung, and her furniture could be rebuilt. The space would recover from Sophia's intervention, perhaps becoming even more precious because Maya had chosen to fight for it. Over the weekend, Maya began the slow process of restoration. She sorted through her scattered books, finding several with bent covers and torn pages from careless packing. Her vintage ceramics had been wrapped in newspaper without protective padding, resulting in chips and cracks to pieces she'd collected over years. Each damaged item felt like a small violation, evidence of how little Sophia had valued Maya's possessions despite claiming to improve them. But Maya found the restoration process surprisingly therapeutic, a way of reclaiming her space and reasserting her own aesthetic choices. David came over Saturday morning with coffee and bagels, offering practical help with the heavier lifting and emotional support for the more difficult moments. Together, they began rebuilding the bookshelf that Sophia's contractors had dismantled. "You know what's interesting?" David observed as they measured lumber for replacement shelves. "This is actually an opportunity to make improvements you want, rather than changes someone else imposed." Maya realized he was right. She'd been so focused on restoring everything exactly as it had been that she hadn't considered whether she might want to make her own modifications. The forced destruction of her space could become a chance for intentional evolution. They spent the weekend not just rebuilding, but upgrading, adding better lighting for reading, and creating a more ergonomic workspace. Maya found herself energized by the project in a way she hadn't felt during the stressful weeks of Sophia's residency. Sunday evening, as they admired their progress, Maya reflected on how much had changed in just a few days. Her house felt like hers again, peaceful and organized according to her own preferences. But more importantly, she felt like herself again, clear about her boundaries and confident in her right to enforce them. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia that evening, a photo of a trendy restaurant with the caption, "Marcus took me to the opening of this amazing new gallery space, exactly the kind of networking opportunity I needed." Maya studied the image, noting Sophia's radiant smile and expensive-looking dress. Her sister appeared to have recovered from their confrontation with remarkable speed, already back to the glamorous lifestyle that Marcus's support provided. Maya felt no jealousy or regret seeing Sophia's apparent happiness. If anything, she felt relief that Sophia had landed on her feet so quickly and wouldn't need to return to Maya for additional support.
The following week brought a series of text messages that revealed the true nature of Sophia's new living arrangement. The initial gratitude for Marcus's hospitality gave way to complaints about his small apartment, his irregular schedule, and his expectation that she contribute to household expenses. "He actually asked me to buy groceries," one message read. "I explained that I'm between opportunities right now, but he seems to think I should spend my savings on food instead of preserving them for emergencies." Maya read these updates with a mixture of amusement and frustration. Sophia was encountering the same financial expectations with Marcus that she'd ignored with Maya, but somehow the requests seemed unreasonable when they came from her temporary host rather than her sister. More messages followed over the next few days. Marcus's couch was uncomfortable for extended sleeping. His friends were boring and focused on business rather than art. His neighborhood was inconvenient for the social activities Sophia enjoyed. Maya realized that Sophia was building a case for why her current situation was unsustainable, laying the groundwork for another request to return to Maya's house. The pattern was so predictable that Maya almost admired its consistency. The inevitable call came on Thursday evening, just as Maya was settling down to read in her rebuilt living room. "Maya, I'm so sorry to bother you," Sophia began, with practiced contrition, "but I'm having some serious problems with the Marcus situation." Maya said nothing, allowing Sophia to continue her explanation without encouragement or interruption. "It turns out he's not as financially stable as I thought," Sophia continued. "He's behind on his rent, and there are issues with the gallery that might affect my job. Plus, his living situation is really temporary and chaotic." Maya listened to the litany of complaints, recognizing the careful way Sophia was presenting Marcus's problems rather than her own. The subtext was clear. Sophia needed somewhere else to stay, and Maya was the obvious solution. "That sounds challenging," Maya replied neutrally. "It really is," Sophia agreed, encouraged by Maya's sympathetic tone. "I'm starting to think I made a mistake leaving your place so abruptly."
We were just starting to work out the kinks in our living arrangement. Maya almost laughed at the characterization of their month-long conflict as kinks that had been nearly resolved. Sophia's ability to rewrite history was truly impressive. "Sophia, what are you asking me?" "I was hoping we could try again," Sophia said with renewed confidence. "I've learned so much about myself these past few weeks, and I think I understand now what went wrong before. I could be a much better houseguest this time." Maya looked around her peaceful living room, noting the books properly shelved, the artwork carefully hung, and the furniture arranged exactly as she preferred. The space felt harmonious and authentically hers, in a way it hadn't during Sophia's residency. "No," Maya said simply. "No?" Sophia repeated as if she hadn't heard correctly. "No, you can't come back here. Our arrangement is over permanently." "Maya, you can't be serious. I'm your sister. You wouldn't leave me homeless." "You're not homeless," Maya pointed out. "You're staying with Marcus. If that situation isn't working out, you need to find another solution that doesn't involve me." "But where am I supposed to go?" Sophia's voice took on the familiar note of rising panic. "I can't afford my own place yet, and I don't have other family in the area." Maya felt the old guilt beginning to stir, the lifelong conditioning that made her responsible for Sophia's problems. But she also remembered the scattered books, the dismantled furniture, and the constant feeling of being a stranger in her own home. "That's not my problem to solve," Maya said, gently but firmly. "Not your problem?" Sophia's voice climbed higher. "I'm your sister, Maya. Family helps family." "Family also respects family," Maya replied, "something you never learned to do." "I respected you," Sophia protested. "I may have made some mistakes, but I was trying to contribute to our shared space." "It was never our shared space," Maya corrected. "It was my space that I allowed you to use temporarily. The fact that you can't understand that difference is exactly why you can't come back." Sophia was quiet for several moments, apparently processing Maya's absolute refusal to reconsider. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted from pleading to accusatory. "I can't believe how selfish you've become," she said with real venom. "The Maya I grew up with would never turn her back on family like this." The Maya you grew up with was a doormat, Maya replied calmly. I'm not that person anymore. You're right, Sophia said bitterly. You've become cold and calculating. Success has changed you, and not for the better. Maya recognized the attack as Sophia's final attempt to make Maya feel guilty for maintaining boundaries. The implication that Maya's independence and self-respect were character flaws revealed everything about their dynamic. If standing up for myself makes me cold, then I'll accept that, Maya said. I'd rather be cold than constantly taken advantage of. Fine, Sophia snapped. Don't come crying to me when you realize what you've lost. The call ended abruptly, leaving Maya with the dial tone and a strange sense of finality. She realized that their relationship, as she had known it, was probably over. Sophia would never forgive Maya for refusing to enable her behavior, and Maya could never trust Sophia to respect basic boundaries. The loss felt significant but not devastating. Maya had spent so much energy managing Sophia's needs and emotions that she'd forgotten what it felt like to focus on her own goals and well-being. Over the following weeks, Maya settled into a routine that felt both familiar and entirely new. Her house remained peaceful and organized, her relationships with friends and David deepened without the constant stress of household conflict. Her work performance improved as her attention was no longer divided between professional responsibilities and family drama. She heard about Sophia occasionally through their parents, who reported that she was figuring things out and exploring different opportunities. Maya suspected this meant Sophia was moving between various temporary arrangements, relying on different men to provide housing and financial support. Their parents initially tried to pressure Maya to reconcile with Sophia, suggesting that family was more important than property and that Maya was being rigid about minor issues. But when Maya explained the full scope of Sophia's behavior, including the unauthorized renovations, even they struggled to defend her actions. She hired contractors to tear down your bookshelves? Their mother repeated in disbelief during one phone conversation. Without asking? Without asking, Maya confirmed. She considered it a gift. That's not a gift, their father interjected from the background. That's destruction of property. Maya felt vindicated by their shock, though she realized their support came too late to change the fundamental patterns that had shaped their family relationships. Sophia had been enabled for so long that even their parents were surprised when she finally went too far. 3 months after Sophia's departure, Maya received an unexpected visitor. She was working in her garden on a Saturday morning when a familiar car pulled into her driveway. For a moment, her heart raced with anxiety, expecting Sophia to emerge with more demands or manipulations. Instead, David got out of the passenger seat, followed by a woman Maya didn't immediately recognize. She was tall and elegant, with graying hair and a warm smile that seemed genuinely friendly rather than calculating. Maya, David called out with obvious excitement, I want you to meet my mother, Catherine. Mom, this is Maya. Catherine Walsh approached with outstretched hands, taking Maya's dirt-covered fingers in her own without concern for her pristine clothing. David has told me so much about you, Catherine said warmly, and about the beautiful home you've created here. I hope you don't mind my dropping by unannounced. Maya looked around her garden, noting the neat rows of vegetables and herbs she'd planted, the flower beds she'd designed, and the small patio area where she and David often shared morning coffee. The space reflected her personality and values in a way that felt authentically hers. Not at all, Maya replied honestly. I'd love to show you around. They spent the morning touring Maya's house and garden, with Catherine offering genuine compliments about Maya's renovation work and design choices. Her interest seemed authentic rather than polite, and she asked thoughtful questions about Maya's process and inspiration. Over lunch, Catherine shared stories about her own experiences as a young professional, the challenges she'd faced establishing independence, and the relationships she had to navigate when family members couldn't accept her boundaries. David mentioned you'd had some difficult family situations recently, Catherine said with gentle diplomacy. Family relationships can be so complicated, especially when people have different values about responsibility and respect. Maya found herself opening up about the situation with Sophia, describing the month-long conflict and its eventual resolution. Catherine listened without judgment, occasionally nodding with recognition or asking clarifying questions. It sounds like you handled a very difficult situation with remarkable grace, Catherine said finally.
Setting boundaries with family members takes tremendous courage, especially when you've been conditioned to prioritize their needs over your own well-being.
The validation felt profound and healing in a way Maya hadn't expected. She realized how much she'd needed to hear from someone outside her immediate family that her choices had been reasonable and necessary. As Catherine prepared to leave, she handed Maya a small wrapped package with a mischievous smile. "A little housewarming gift," she explained, "though I understand you've been in your home for quite some time." Maya unwrapped the package to find a beautiful ceramic bowl, clearly handmade and perfectly sized for the fruit she liked to keep on her kitchen counter. The piece was elegant but functional, expensive but not ostentatious. "It's beautiful," Maya said, genuinely moved by the thoughtful gesture. "Thank you." "I have a feeling you appreciate things that are both beautiful and practical," Catherine replied with a knowing smile. "David says you have excellent taste in choosing quality over flashiness." Maya realized that David had been sharing details about her values and preferences with his mother, the way someone might when they were serious about a relationship's future. The thought filled her with warmth and possibility rather than anxiety. After Catherine left, Maya and David spent the afternoon working together in the garden, planting herbs and discussing plans for expanding the patio area. Their conversation was easy and collaborative, each contributing ideas while respecting the other's vision. "Your mother is wonderful," Maya said as they shared iced tea in the shade of her apple tree. "She likes you too," David replied with obvious satisfaction. "She kept commenting on how peaceful and authentic your home feels." Maya looked around her property, noting the subtle evidence of her own choices and hard work everywhere she looked. The house represented not just shelter, but self-determination, the physical manifestation of her independence and values. "It does feel peaceful," Maya agreed. "For the first time in years, I feel like I can just exist here without having to defend or justify my choices." "That's what home should be," David said simply. "A place where you can be yourself without performance or compromise." Maya realized that David understood something about her that Sophia never had: the value of autonomy, the importance of respect, the way personal space reflected personal identity. These weren't abstract concepts to him, but fundamental requirements for emotional well-being. That evening, as Maya prepared dinner in her quiet kitchen, she reflected on how much her life had changed since Sophia's departure. She'd lost a relationship with her sister, but she'd gained something more valuable: a clear sense of her own worth and boundaries. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Maya, this is Sophia. I'm moving to Los Angeles next week. Marcus knows some gallery owners there who might have opportunities for me. I wanted to say goodbye and maybe clear the air between us before I go." Maya stared at the message for several minutes, considering how to respond. Part of her felt sad that their conflict was ending with Sophia's departure rather than resolution, but a larger part felt relief that distance would make future boundary violations impossible. She typed and deleted several responses before settling on something simple and honest. "I wish you well in Los Angeles. Take care of yourself." Sophia's reply came quickly. "Thank you. I hope someday you'll understand that everything I did came from love." Maya read the message twice, recognizing it as Sophia's final attempt to reframe her behavior as misunderstood affection rather than boundary violations. Even in departure, Sophia couldn't acknowledge that love required respect and consideration. Maya deleted the conversation without responding further. Some relationships couldn't be repaired because the fundamental understanding of mutual respect was missing. Sophia would always believe that loving someone gave her unlimited access to her resources and space. Maya would always need boundaries and reciprocity to feel safe in relationships. The incompatibility was permanent, but Maya no longer felt guilty about it. 6 months later, Maya received a wedding invitation in the mail. Heavy cardstock, elegant typography, expensive printing. "Sophia Chen and Marcus Rodriguez request the pleasure of your company." The ceremony would take place at a vineyard in Napa Valley, with accommodations at a luxury resort for out-of-town guests. Maya studied the invitation with a mixture of surprise and recognition. Sophia had landed on her feet again, finding someone willing to provide not just housing and financial support, but marriage and social status. The speed of the engagement suggested it was more strategic than romantic, but that had always been Sophia's approach to relationships.
David found Maya reading the invitation when he arrived for dinner that evening, noting her thoughtful expression. "Are you planning to go?" he asked, gently. Maya considered the question seriously. Attending would mean expensive travel, awkward family dynamics, and probable requests for reconciliation that would reopen old wounds. Declining would mean missing her sister's wedding and possibly facing family criticism about her priorities. "No," Maya said finally. "I don't think it would be healthy for either of us." David nodded without surprise, understanding Maya's reasoning without requiring detailed explanation. They'd discussed the Sophia situation many times over the past months, and he'd witnessed firsthand how much Maya's mental health had improved since establishing clear boundaries. Maya composed a polite response, wishing Sophia happiness in her marriage while declining to attend the ceremony. She sent an expensive serving bowl from the registry, choosing something beautiful and practical that reflected her own values rather than Sophia's preferences. The gift was acknowledged with a brief thank you card featuring a photo of Sophia and Marcus at what appeared to be an engagement party. Sophia looked radiant and perfectly styled, Marcus appeared wealthy and appropriately smitten, and the setting was elegant enough to suggest their new life together would be comfortable and luxurious. Maya felt genuinely happy for Sophia's success, while remaining clear that it didn't change anything about their own relationship. Sophia had found someone whose resources and tolerance levels matched her needs. Maya had protected her own resources and emotional well-being by refusing to enable behavior that harmed her. Both outcomes were positive, even if they were incompatible with sisterly closeness. As autumn arrived, Maya found herself reflecting on the full cycle of change that had occurred since Sophia's unexpected arrival the previous spring. Her house felt more like home than ever, her relationship with David had deepened into something stable and fulfilling, and her professional life had reached new levels of success and satisfaction. Most importantly, she'd learned to trust her own instincts about boundaries and respect. The skills she'd developed in refusing Sophia's manipulations had transferred to other areas of her life, making her more confident in workplace negotiations and more selective about personal relationships. Standing in her rebuilt living room on a quiet Sunday evening, surrounded by her carefully chosen books and artwork, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude for the difficult lessons the past year had taught her. The confrontation with Sophia had forced her to articulate and defend values she'd previously taken for granted. She was grateful for her home, her independence, her ability to make choices based on her own needs rather than family expectations. But mostly, she was grateful for learning that love without respect wasn't love at all, and that protecting herself from people who couldn't offer both wasn't selfish but necessary. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from David. "Dinner tomorrow? I have something important I want to discuss with you." The message filled her with excitement rather than anxiety, the way important conversations should feel when they occurred between people who truly understood and respected each other. Looking around her peaceful living room, Maya smiled with the deep satisfaction of someone who had fought for what mattered and won. Not through conflict or confrontation, but through the simple, revolutionary act of refusing to compromise her own well-being for someone else's convenience. Sometimes the most important battles weren't dramatic or public. Sometimes they happened quietly, in your own living room, when you finally decided that your needs matter as much as everyone else's. Maya had learned that lesson the hard way, but she'd learned it completely. And that knowledge had transformed not just her living space, but her entire understanding of what it meant to be truly at home in your own life. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.